Hello, I am Injus from Gemynd Beadu, and today I'm being interviewed by Schaden Collective. I go by Injus. My project is Gemynd Beadu, or Gemynd Beadu, depending on how you want to say it. It's Anglo-Saxon for fight with memory. It's a dead language, so there's no correct way to say it. I trace it back to my heritage, which is Anglo-Saxon, and I felt that I had a connection with that, and that's how I've come up with that name, how I've come up with that project. I first came into metal with my family. I had a very young family. My uncle would listen to things like the Melvins or Mudhoney, which, grunge or metal adjacent. My dad was the same thing. He would listen to things like Ministry, Metallica, what have you. So I grew up listening to a lot of that at an early age, as well as more experimental and harder dance music like The Prodigy. So it's always been something I've been around, and it's always been something I've gravitated towards. As I was growing up, I found more metal bands myself, and since then it's just sort of been a journey and something that I decided I wanted to do as well. Outside of music, it's mostly either film or photography, but mostly film. Like most other people, I enjoy horror movies. Slasher flicks I quite enjoy, but I also really get into Japanese B horrors, so the films of Shozen Fukui and Shinya Tsukamoto, and I apologize if I'm butchering those names, but things like Tetsuo the Iron Man, Pinocchio 964, Rubber's Lover, that kind of stuff, really, really enjoyable. So I'm always on the lookout for more of that. Slashers, splatters, whatever. It's all a lot of fun for me. Sure. So, mentioning the Anglo-Saxon heritage, but I also do have an Aboriginal heritage. It's a small part, but it is relevant. My great grandfather was stolen generation. I was down in Tasmania where they have an old manor house, and in that manor house there is a cellar which they call the food cellar, but it would often house the Aboriginal servants that they would use there. So standing up against the wall in that cellar, it felt like a little bit of what some of my ancestors would have gone through. Aside from that, I like to do urban exploring, so going out to abandoned locations, which I've hinted at. One of my more recent photos was a friend taking a photo of me cracking a lock, just so we could try and get into this small metal warehouse, and in there we found blankets, clearly abandoned, but we also found kids' toys, and that was an incredibly harrowing and depressing moment for me. It told a story that you could only try and piece together, and I don't know if what I thought was right, someone trying to raise a child there, or someone who had lost a child and was holding on to something, someone who had lost everything but a child or some sort of childhood was important to them, and that was deeply affecting for me, and it was something that I want to remember. As far as metal influences, I would say Godflesh. Just when I first heard them as a young teenager, I thought it was the most incredibly heavy and robotic and pulsing sound I'd ever heard, and it was very changing for me, as much as people say that, but it was just this really raw expression, a couple of young kids just making what was just channeled anger into pure audio. Another one of my black metal inspirations would be a friend who is now past Luathra of Internal Purgatory. He had been making black metal for some years before he went, and he introduced me to a lot of black metal that I like. Things like, Zaster, Leviathan, and the thing there was that, I had heard black metal when I was younger, but a lot of it was very, very produced, which, is fine. But when I heard these one-man acts, like even Streborg, for example, that was what black metal was to me in my head. When I heard that raw aggression of a soul person just putting that out into the world, I thought, wow, this is what black metal is when I hear it in my head, and I was captivated, and since then it's been a part of me and what I do. My approach to writing and creating music would be that I always try to have a guitar or bass near me. I like to focus on bass in my music. I really enjoy the low-lying heavy thrum of it, which probably came from Godflesh. So I always try to have something like that near me, and I will just sit there playing. If I decide something is good, then I will record it. Something might come of it, something might not. I'll also just sit there sometimes, if I can't sleep, just laying and thinking about music. If I get something in my head, I get up, I go and record it. I go back and try and sleep, and from there I just try and build it out, just re-record. So much time just spent beating my head against a wall of frustration and anger at myself, which I then try and put in that music, and it's a very fruitful process, but it can also be a very draining and frustrating process at times too, in that it makes me hate it. It makes me want to give up, and then I push through and I come out with something. Pushing through to me is just continuing. Just if I have an idea, I can't fully scrap it. I need to keep something, even if it's just a sample, a drum pattern, a certain sound. I need to make sure I never completely throw away an entire track, otherwise I feel like everything has been wasted. So even if I go right back to the start, I've got a sample and make sure to have that somewhere in something I'm reworking. I change the tempo. It's an art, not a science, and it is very difficult at times. A fight with memory. It's a constant fight. A fight with memory to me means, things that I've had which I can no longer get back. Things that will always play in my head. Nostalgia in a painful way. And sometimes going back and listening to those tracks and working on these things, the same thing happens. I realize that I might have spent hours on something that I actually had a better version of before, and I've already recorded over that. I can't go back and fix it, but that's what it is. It's pushing on. It's making sure you always get through. It's continuing even though your headspace is in the worst place possible. My end goals for this project are just to be present in the world. It's the idea that you're only truly dead once you're no longer remembered, and death scares me. This is my way of having an imprint onto the world, something I can leave to whatever world is left out there. I don't know what it's going to look like in 10 years. I just want to make sure that I keep doing something, and that I keep that fight going. Death scares me because it is unimaginable you can try and put yourself in any perspective around. But death is, as I said, unimaginable. It is not a blackness or a void as one might imagine. It is pure nothing, something that humans cannot comprehend, and that's why it scares me, because I cannot comprehend it, I cannot control it. I am a fan of pineapple on pizza, however, you can't overdo it. You need to have a little bit of sweet with the savoury, otherwise the entire thing is ruined.
How does that work?
So if you've got the savoury, you know, say ham for example, the savoury pizza dough, the sauce, you have the pineapple, the sweetness, which brings out that extra flavour. However, if you overdo that, all you're tasting is sugar, the acidity of the pineapple on your tongue, and it ruins what should be a good savoury experience with a sweet underlying. As far as what's next, I'm hoping to have an album out by the end of the year, maybe early next year. I want to surpass what I did earlier. I want to keep improving. I want to fight against everything that says my music is not as good as it once was, even though I've only had one release. I've only been doing this for a short amount of time. I want to make sure that I'm pushing myself, and I want to make the album sound more like how I feel inside, and it's very hard to describe that. Something I can only put out through music. It's a sense of longing, of loss, of dead friends, of that nothingness that I'm afraid of. With my music, it's, you know, it's dark, it's bleak, it's the difficult things that I feel, but it's also about wanting to keep going, and I think that's something that is important. You know, I've lost a lot of people, and there have been times where it's been a question of whether I want to keep going, whether I want to keep fighting, but I do, and I think that my music is reflective of that. And you know, if someone feels that my music can help them in some way, you know, I would also encourage you to please reach out. I'm more than happy to provide, you know, information, download codes, whatever, if something is going to help someone in that way. The best way to support me right now would just be to listen to my music, you know, I personally don't care whether it's purchased or not. Just listen, take something away from it. If something can help you or make you feel something, that's what's important to me. Supporting Schaden Collective as a label is really useful as well, you know, for everyone on there, for the people running the label. The message is good, and I think they should be supported alongside me. I am Injus from Gemynd Beadu. I have been interviewed by Schaden Collective. Support the underground, and please stick around.
And for an outro,
Backflip into the water. I don't.
Yeah, I just saw you.
It's a sense of longing, of loss, of dead friends, of that nothingness that I'm afraid of.
No, I was just talking like the most. Like, you sound like a Batman monologue. It's just.